3 weeks ago, my wife reserved our favorite restaurant, invited all our friends, and announced that our marriage was a waste of time. She said she was upgrading. Everyone cheered her liberation while I sat there watching my life implode in front of a dinner crowd. But let me back up a little. We'd been married for 6 years. Not perfect, but I thought we were solid. Sure, we had our rough patches like any couple, but nothing that screamed divorce court. She'd been distant for a few months, working late, going out with girlfriends more often. Classic signs, right? But when I'd bring it up, she'd flip it around, make me feel like I was being paranoid or controlling. The restaurant thing came out of nowhere. She told me she wanted to have dinner with our friends at Antonio's, the Italian place we went to for our anniversary every year. Said it would be nice to get everyone together since we hadn't seen them in a while. I thought it was sweet. Shows you how naive I was. I should have known something was up when I walked into that private dining room. The way everyone looked at me, like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. They all knew. Every single one of them knew what was coming except me. She waited until after the appetizers. Stood up with her wine glass like she was giving a toast. I actually smiled, thinking she was going to say something nice about us, maybe announce a vacation we were planning or something. Instead, she cleared her throat and said, "I wanted you all here tonight because you're my closest friends, and I needed witnesses for what I'm about to say." Her voice was steady, rehearsed. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned, calculated. This marriage has been a complete waste of my time. I've spent 6 years of my prime trying to make something work with someone who just doesn't get it. I'm done settling. I'm done pretending. I'm upgrading. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then our friend from college started clapping. Then another. Then the whole table erupted in applause like she'd just announced she was curing cancer. They were actually cheering. Cheering for the end of my marriage like it was some kind of victory. She looked right at me with this smile I'd never seen before. Cold. Satisfied. Like she'd just won a game I didn't know we were playing. I could have made a scene. Could have stood up and demanded answers. Could have asked why she needed an audience to destroy our marriage. Could have pointed out that she'd just humiliated me in front of people I considered friends. But I didn't. I took off my wedding ring, placed it on the table next to my untouched pasta, and walked out. No words. No drama. No giving her the reaction she was clearly expecting. The silence I left behind was more powerful than anything I could have said. The applause died immediately. I heard chairs scraping against the floor as I reached the door, probably people realizing they'd just participated in something pretty messed up. I drove home in complete quiet. No radio, no phone calls, no processing what just happened. Just silence. When I got to the house, I went straight to the garage, grabbed some boxes, and started packing her stuff. Not out of anger, just practicality. If she was upgrading, she'd need her things for wherever she was going. She came home around midnight, probably expecting to find me drunk or crying or begging for explanations. Instead, she found her clothes neatly folded in boxes by the front door. "We need to talk," she said. I looked at her for a long moment, then went upstairs to bed. I had work in the morning, and talking wasn't going to change what happened at that restaurant. She'd made her choice in front of an audience. Now she could live with it. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of absolute silence between us while she's been staying at her sister's place. 3 weeks of her trying to reach me through friends, through family, through text messages I don't respond to. And now she needs something from me. Something she can't get from all those friends who cheered for her liberation. Funny how that works. The first few days after the restaurant incident were interesting. Word travels fast in our social circle, and apparently, the narrative being spread wasn't quite matching what actually happened. According to the version making its rounds, I'd stormed out in a rage. I was painted as the angry, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife's independence. Some even suggested I'd been holding her back for years. My brother called me on the second day. "What the hell happened at Antonio's? Everyone's saying you lost it," and made a scene. I left my ring on the table and walked out. "That's it. That's it. You didn't say anything?" "Nothing." He was quiet for a moment. "That's actually worse for her, you know? She was probably expecting you to explode so she could justify the whole thing." He wasn't wrong. The silence was driving her crazy. I could tell from the messages she kept sending. First, they were defensive, explaining why she had to do it that way. Then they turned apologetic, saying maybe she could have handled it better. Then angry, accusing me of being immature for not responding. I deleted every single one without reading past the first sentence. Her sister showed up at my office on day 4. Professional building, security at the front desk, and she somehow convinced them to let her up. I was in the middle of a client meeting when my assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, there's a woman here who says it's urgent family business." I excused myself and found her pacing in the reception area. The moment she saw me, she launched into this prepared speech about how marriages take work and how I shouldn't give up so easily. "She made a mistake," she said. "People say things they don't mean when they're under stress." Under stress. I kept my voice level. She reserved a restaurant, invited 12 people, and prepared a speech about how I'm a waste of her time. That's not stress. That's planning. She wants to come home. She wants to work this out. Then she shouldn't have announced her upgrade in front of an audience. I walked back to my meeting, leaving her standing there. Security escorted her out when she tried to follow. The friends who had cheered that night started reaching out too. Awkward calls and texts, suddenly trying to play mediator. They wanted to explain her side, help us work through this rough patch, suggest counseling. I blocked every number. By the end of the first week, I'd changed the locks. Not out of spite, just common sense. She'd already announced she was done with the marriage. No point in leaving the door open for more drama. She found out when she tried to come by while I was at work. The neighbors told me she sat in her car for 2 hours, calling my phone over and over. When I got home, there were 17 missed calls and a long voicemail I didn't listen to. Week 2 brought the lawyers. She wanted to discuss division of assets, the house, our joint accounts. I told my attorney to handle everything according to what she'd requested that night at the restaurant. She wanted an upgrade. Upgrades usually cost extra. The joint checking account had been cleaned out by day 10. Her half, of course. The credit cards were maxed out on things I didn't recognize. Designer bags, jewelry, expensive dinners. She was living like someone who'd just inherited money, not someone going through a divorce. My attorney called with an update. She's asking for spousal support. Based on what? She claims she needs time to get back on her feet professionally. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. The woman who'd announced her independence to a cheering crowd now wanted me to fund her liberation. Counter with nothing. Nothing. She upgraded, remember? Upgrades shouldn't need financial assistance from the old model. By week 3, the picture was getting clearer. The friends who cheered weren't exactly lining up to help with her new independent life. The sister who'd shown up at my office wasn't offering a permanent place to stay. And apparently, the apartment hunting wasn't going as smoothly as expected. That's when the texts started getting desperate. Not apologetic anymore, just practical. She needed to talk about logistics, about paperwork, about things that require my signature. I saved those messages, not to respond to them, just to remember what desperation looked like from someone who'd publicly celebrated the end of our marriage. Because I had a feeling I was going to need that perspective very soon. Week 3 is when reality started hitting her like a freight train. The apartment applications she'd been filling out were getting rejected, not because of her income, but because of her credit score. Turns out those maxed out credit cards from her independence celebration had consequences. Plus, most decent places in our area wanted a cosigner for anyone without established rental history. My attorney got the call first. Her lawyer wanted to discuss temporary arrangements while the divorce was pending. Apparently, staying with her sister indefinitely wasn't working out. The sister had 2 kids and a husband who wasn't thrilled about the permanent house guest situation. She needs somewhere to live, my attorney explained during our phone call. She should have thought about that before her public announcement. Her lawyer is suggesting she could move back into the marital home temporarily. I was quiet for a moment. The audacity was actually impressive. Tell them no. She wanted an upgrade. Upgraded people don't move backward. Her attempts to reach me through mutual friends intensified. Suddenly, people who hadn't called me in months were very concerned about my well-being. They'd start casual conversations about how divorce was hard on everyone, how maybe I should consider being the bigger person. I cut those conversations short too. The most pathetic attempt came from her gym buddy. She cornered me at the grocery store, probably not by accident. "She's really struggling," she said, blocking my cart in the cereal aisle. "Maybe you could just talk to her. Work something out." She had 12 witnesses when she worked everything out already. That was just emotions talking. She didn't mean it. She stood up, made a speech, and waited for applause. That's not emotions. That's a performance. I pushed my cart around her and kept shopping. But the most telling moment came when I ran into one of the guys who'd been at that dinner. We played poker together for 3 years, had barbecues, watched games. I thought we were friends. He was coming out of Home Depot as I was going in. Couldn't avoid the conversation. Hey man, how are you holding up? Fine. Look, about that night. He shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should have said something. It was pretty awkward. Awkward enough to stop clapping. He didn't have an answer for that. You want to know the truth? I said, you did me a favor. All of you. I got to see exactly who was in my corner when things got tough. That weekend, her desperation reached a new level. She showed up at my gym, not to work out, just sitting in the parking lot when I came out. She followed me to the gas station, staying 2 cars behind like some kind of amateur private investigator. When I got home, she was parked across the street. I waved at her through my window and closed the blinds. The really interesting part was watching her social media evolution. The first week had been all about independence and new beginnings. Inspirational quotes about knowing your worth and not settling. Pictures of expensive dinners and shopping trips. By week 3, the posts were different. Subtle hints about how hard change could be. Photos with captions about true friends showing their colors during difficult times. The comments were getting fewer and less enthusiastic. Her sister called my work again, but this time security was ready for her. They told her to make an appointment or don't come back. Then came the call I'd been expecting. My attorney's office, Thursday afternoon. She wants to discuss the house. Specifically, she's asking if you'd be willing to let her stay there while she gets back on her feet. For how long? Her attorney didn't specify. They're calling it a humanitarian gesture. Humanitarian. I repeated the word slowly. The woman who publicly announced that our marriage was a waste of her time wants humanitarian assistance. That's essentially what they're asking for. What's her backup plan if I say no? They didn't mention one. But based on the application rejections and her current living situation, I'd say her options are limited. Limited. That was putting it nicely. I told my attorney I'd think about it, but we both knew what my answer would be. She'd made her choice in front of an audience. Now she could live with the consequences in front of the same audience. The desperation was just getting started. The 4th week brought a masterclass in manipulation that would have impressed a professional con artist. First came the health scare text, urgent message about chest pains and a trip to the emergency room. How she was all alone and scared. How she realized what really mattered when she thought she might be having a heart attack. I called the hospital. No record of her being admitted or treated. Shock. Next was the financial emergency. Her car had broken down, and she didn't have money for repairs. She was stranded, couldn't get to work, couldn't look for apartments. Just needed a small loan to get back on her feet. I checked social media. She'd posted photos at a wine bar with friends just hours before the supposed breakdown. The car looked fine in the parking lot behind her. Then came the guilt trip campaign. Messages about our wedding day, our honeymoon, all the good times we'd shared. How she'd made a terrible mistake and just wanted a chance to explain everything in person. The explanation, according to her texts, was that she'd been having a midlife crisis. The restaurant speech was her way of asking for space to figure things out, not actually ending the marriage. The friends misunderstood her intentions. She never meant for it to sound so final. Creative, I had to give her that. When subtle manipulation didn't work, she switched tactics. Friday night, she showed up at my house with takeout from our favorite Thai place. Just stood on the porch with bags of food, ringing the doorbell every few minutes for an hour. I ordered pizza and watched Netflix while she performed for the neighbors. Saturday brought reinforcements. Her mother showed up, which was interesting since the woman had barely spoken to me in 6 years. Suddenly, I was the son she'd never had, and couldn't I find it in my heart to forgive one terrible mistake? She's always been impulsive, her mother explained through the door. You know how she gets when she's overwhelmed. Overwhelmed enough to reserve a restaurant and invite 12 people to watch her announce my inadequacy. Her mother didn't have a good response for that either. Sunday was the religious angle. She'd found God, apparently, been attending church, praying for guidance, realizing that marriage was a sacred commitment that shouldn't be thrown away over momentary confusion. The same woman who'd called our marriage a waste of time was now invoking the sanctity of marriage. By the following Tuesday, the story had evolved again. Now she was claiming temporary insanity. The stress of her job, our relationship issues, family problems I'd never heard about before. She wasn't thinking clearly that night at the restaurant. Her lawyer actually tried to use this in their communication with my attorney. Temporary diminished capacity due to emotional distress. My response was simple. If she was mentally incompetent when she made that speech, then she's mentally incompetent to sign legal documents now. We should wait until she's declared fit to make decisions. That argument disappeared quickly. Wednesday brought the threat phase. If I didn't start communicating, she'd have no choice but to take more aggressive legal action. She'd fight for half of everything, including my retirement accounts and the business assets I'd built before we even met. Thursday, the threats were replaced by promises. If I'd just meet with her, she'd sign whatever I wanted. No spousal support, no claims on my assets, clean break. She just needed one conversation to explain everything. Friday was back to desperation. She was going to lose her job if she didn't find stable housing soon. Her performance at work was suffering because of the stress. Her sister was threatening to kick her out. She had nowhere else to go. The weekend brought the final card in her deck. Mutual friends staging an intervention. People showed up at my door Saturday morning. People I'd known for years, acting like I was the one with the problem. She made one mistake, they said. Everyone deserves a second chance. She's learned her lesson. You're being cruel by ignoring her. Marriage is about forgiveness. I listened to the whole presentation, then asked a simple question. Would any of you want your spouse to announce in front of your friends that your marriage was a waste of time and they were upgrading? The silence stretched uncomfortably. That's what I thought. They left without accomplishing their mission. By Sunday night, her messages had taken on a different tone. Less begging, more demanding. I owed her a conversation. I was being unreasonable. She deserved better treatment than complete silence. The woman who'd publicly humiliated me was now demanding respect. Monday morning brought the call I'd been waiting for. Not to my attorney this time. Directly to me at work. We need to talk. Today. It's urgent. Her voice was different. Not pleading anymore. Desperate, but trying to hide it behind false confidence. It's about the apartment application. She paused. I need you to co-sign. There it was. The real reason behind 4 weeks of manipulation, guilt trips, and fake emergencies. She didn't want me back. She didn't want to work on our marriage. She didn't want forgiveness or reconciliation. She needed my signature on a lease because nobody else would vouch for the woman who'd publicly celebrated the end of her marriage. The irony was beautiful. I agreed to meet her, not because I wanted to help, but because I wouldn't miss this conversation for anything in the world. For weeks of silence, and this is what finally brought her to my doorstep with her hat in her hand. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. She arrived 15 minutes early, probably hoping to control the narrative from the start. I showed up exactly on time, carrying a small cardboard box I'd picked up from the shipping store on my way over. She looked terrible. Designer clothes couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes or the fact that she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. The confident woman who'd stood up at Antonio's was gone, replaced by someone who kept checking her phone every 30 seconds. Thank you for coming, she started, trying to sound composed. I know this has been difficult for both of us. Has it? I sat down across from her. I've been sleeping fine. She flinched but pressed on. Look, I know you're angry about how things ended, but we need to be practical here. I found a great apartment, but the landlord requires a co-signer because of some credit issues. Credit issues? The divorce is affecting my score temporarily. It's just a formality. I'm not asking you to pay for anything. Just sign the paperwork so I can move on with my life. I placed the cardboard box on the table between us. I brought you something. She looked confused but tried to stay focused. Can we discuss the apartment first? I need to give them an answer by tomorrow. Open the box. What is it? A housewarming gift for your new place. Her hands shook slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside was a folded piece of cardboard, flattened but clearly from a large appliance box. The kind homeless people use for shelter. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at me with disbelief. What the hell is this? Your backup housing plan. Since you're asking the man whose marriage was a waste of your time to co-sign your lease, I figured you might need alternatives. Her face went white, then red. Are you serious right now? Completely. See, here's the thing about upgrades. They're supposed to be better than what you had before. But what you're describing sounds more like a downgrade that requires assistance from the old model. I made a mistake, okay? I said things I didn't mean because I was confused and angry and… Stop. I held up my hand. You weren't confused. You reserved a restaurant. You invited 12 people. You prepared a speech. You waited for applause. The only thing you're confused about now is why your upgrade isn't working out the way you planned. She tried a different approach. Look, I know I hurt you. I know that night was terrible, and I'm sorry. But we were together for 6 years. That has to count for something. It does count. It counts as 6 years I spent with someone who could humiliate me in front of our friends and then expect me to help her move into a new apartment. I'm not asking for much. Just your signature. My signature on a lease so you can start your new life in a place you can't afford without help from the husband you publicly discarded. She was getting desperate now, her voice rising. Fine, you want me to grovel? Is that what this is about? You want me to beg? Actually, no. I want you to understand something very clearly. I leaned forward. The woman who stood up at Antonio's and announced she was upgrading doesn't get to ask favors from the man she upgraded from. But where am I supposed to go? My sister can't let me stay much longer. I've applied everywhere, and they all want a co-signer. You're the only person who qualifies. That's not my problem anymore. You made it very clear that night that my opinion, my feelings, and my future weren't your concern. Why should your housing situation be mine? She grabbed the cardboard from the box and threw it at me. You're a bastard. I'm trying to fix this, and you're being cruel just because your feelings got hurt. My feelings got hurt. I stood up slowly. You think this is about hurt feelings? The coffee shop was getting quiet around us. Other customers were starting to notice. You destroyed 6 years of marriage in front of an audience for entertainment. You turned our relationship into a public joke so your friends could cheer for your liberation. And now you're sitting here asking me to co-sign your lease like we're business partners. I said I was sorry. No, you said you made a mistake. There's a difference. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. What you did was calculated humiliation designed to make yourself feel powerful at my expense. I picked up the flattened cardboard and placed it back in the box, then slid it across the table to her. So here's my answer to your co-signer request. If you're depending on me to help you get that apartment, you better start looking for a nice bridge to sleep under. Because that cardboard is the only housing assistance you're getting from me. She completely lost it. Started yelling about how I was vindictive and cruel, how she never realized what kind of person I really was, how I was proving that she was right to leave me. The entire coffee shop was watching now, just like at Antonio's, except this time she wasn't getting applause. I waited until she ran out of steam, then spoke quietly. You know what's funny? You're still performing, still trying to make me the villain in your story. But everyone here can see exactly what's happening. The woman who publicly celebrated her independence is melting down because her ex-husband won't help her pay rent. I stood up and dropped a 10 on the table for my coffee. Suma de minha frente para sempre. Your place is on the street, not next to me. You did me an enormous favor with that declaration of yours at the restaurant. I walked toward the door, leaving her sitting there with her cardboard box and the stares of everyone in the coffee shop. Behind me, I heard her calling my name, but I didn't turn around. The upgrade sheet announced to 12 people had officially been downgraded to a cardboard box and a reality check. Exactly what she deserved. That was 2 months ago. The divorce was finalized last week. Clean, simple, no drama. She didn't get spousal support, didn't get half my assets, didn't get anything except her personal belongings and the reality check she'd been avoiding. Turns out, when you publicly announce your marriage is worthless in front of witnesses, those witnesses become very useful in court proceedings. My attorney had a field day with the testimony from that night at Antonio's. As for where she ended up living, well, let's just say it wasn't the upgrade she had in mind. Her sister kicked her out 2 days after our coffee shop meeting. Something about not being able to handle the drama anymore. Can't imagine why. She found a studio apartment in the worst part of town, the kind of place that doesn't require co-signers because they're desperate for anyone who can fog a mirror. No doorman, no amenities, bars on the windows. Her social media posts about independence and new beginnings stopped completely after she moved in there. The friends who cheered for her liberation at the restaurant? Funny how quickly that support evaporated when she needed actual help. Turns out applauding someone's decision is a lot easier than dealing with the consequences of that decision. I heard through the grapevine that she tried reaching out to some of them for a place to stay, maybe a co-signer for a better apartment. The same people who celebrated her freedom suddenly had very full guest rooms and very complicated financial situations. My life, on the other hand, improved dramatically. The house is peaceful now. No more walking on eggshells. No more analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. No more wondering if I'm somehow failing as a husband because nothing I do seems to make her happy. I redecorated the entire place, got rid of the furniture that came with baggage, and bought exactly what I wanted. The living room has a massive sectional that's perfect for watching football. The garage is organized like a showroom. The kitchen has every gadget I've ever wanted but couldn't justify buying. Work is better too. Funny how much more focused you can be when you're not constantly stressed about what kind of mood your wife will be in when you get home. My productivity shot up, and I got a promotion 3 weeks after the divorce was final. Started going to the gym regularly, something I'd let slide during the last year of our marriage. Lost 15 pounds, gained back muscle definition I hadn't seen in years. Feel better than I have in a decade. The really satisfying part is how word spread about what actually happened at Antonio's. The true version of events, not the spin she tried to put on it. People talk, and eventually the real story comes out. Especially after the coffee shop incident. Turns out, several people recorded her meltdown on their phones. Amazing how quickly viral videos spread these days. She became a local cautionary tale about burning bridges and expecting people to help you rebuild them. I ran into one of her friends last month, someone who'd been at that dinner. She actually apologized for clapping that night, said she got caught up in the moment and didn't think about how it must have felt from my perspective. We thought she was just being dramatic, she admitted. Nobody expected her to actually follow through with leaving. But you all cheered anyway. She didn't have a good answer for that. 2 weeks ago, I started dating again. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and dinners with women who appreciate a man who knows what he wants and doesn't tolerate disrespect. It's refreshing to have conversations with people who don't see relationships as power struggles to be won. The contrast is stark. These women listen when I talk, contribute to conversations instead of just waiting for their turn to speak, show genuine interest in my thoughts and opinions. Everything that had been missing from my marriage for the past 2 years. I heard she's been trying to date too, but apparently, it's not going well. Hard to build trust with someone new when your dating profile has to explain why you're divorced and why your ex-husband won't even speak to you. Plus, word gets around in a small community. Men talk to each other, and the story of the woman who humiliated her husband in public tends to make the rounds. Not exactly the kind of reputation that attracts quality partners. The best part of all this is the peace. No drama, no manipulation, no walking into rooms and wondering what I did wrong this time. No more being blamed for her bad moods or her career disappointments or her general dissatisfaction with life. I wake up every morning in a house that belongs entirely to me, with plans that don't require anyone else's approval, surrounded by things I chose because I like them, not because someone else thought they looked good. The wedding ring I left on that table at Antonio's is still sitting in my jewelry box. Not because I'm sentimental about it, but because it's a reminder of what happens when you let someone treat you like you're disposable. She taught me an invaluable lesson that night, even though it wasn't the lesson she intended to teach. She showed me exactly what I was worth to her, and more importantly, she showed me what I should be worth to myself. Never again will I accept being someone's backup plan. Never again will I tolerate being disrespected in public or private. Never again will I make myself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. The woman who announced she was upgrading ended up with the biggest downgrade of her life. Meanwhile, the man she thought she was leaving behind actually did upgrade, just not in the way she expected. I upgraded to a life without her in it. Best decision I never had to make. She handed me my freedom on a silver platter at Antonio's that night, even though she thought she was taking it away. Turns out, the only person who got liberated that evening was me.